What's up, basement dwellers? Welcome to another edition of Podern Nerd. I am your host, Chris the Dace Man, and I hope you enjoyed last week's episode with the inaugural reformatting of what Podern Nerd is. On today's show, I'll be joined by Mr. Frank Cline himself to discuss X-Men 97. Later, I'll be joined by Gibby to continue our Bad Batch conversation, talking about episode 14, Flash Strike, penultimate episode before the finale next week. All that and more here on Podern Nerd. I am Chris the Dace Man Dace. Let's jump right into it with your nerd news. It's time for nerd news, and I am Chris the Dace Man Dace delivering you that news. And Warner Brothers has announced that Evangeline movie will have a writer and director set. And that is Margot Robbie, who is set to star in the upcoming project. Robbie is set to join the project alongside Tony McNamara, who Deadline reports is set to write the script for the film. Previously reported on superherohype.com, Olivia Wilde will direct the feature, which Simon Kinberg is producing through his and Robbie's Lucky Chat Productions banner. So, Evangeline comic was released in 1995. May specifically, and the comic's official synopsis describes the titular character as a beautiful red-headed fallen angel from God's war host who must live on Earth as a mortal and contend with the forces of hell. So it'll be interesting to see how Margot handles the role as she goes into another comic book movie. That's not Harley Quinn. Yay for her. Other news. Kind of a light news week here on Podern Nerd, but Jeff Bridges has confirmed that he will be returning for Tron Ares. Isn't that awesome? Jeff Bridges is back in his role. He's, quote, "I'm heading off this Saturday to play a part in the third installment of the Tron story," Bridges said in an interview with the Film Comment podcast via the playlist. "Jared Leto is the star of this third one, and I'm really anxious to work with him. I've admired his work." Bridges originated the role in 1982's Tron software engineer hero Kevin Flynn. He returned not only as the older Flynn, but also as a primary villain Clue in 2010's Tron Legacy. The latter character required the 64-year-old Bridges to be de-aged into his 30s, with the Oscar-winning actor admits regret, saying, quote, "I didn't like the way it looked. I felt like I looked more like Bill Maher than myself, and it was kind of bizarre." So Jeff Bridges is back for the third installment of Tron Ares. In other news, Netflix is reportedly doing a new Scooby Doo project that will be live-action reboot. This is reportedly being penned by Josh Applebaum, who served as the executive producer on the live-action adaptation of Cowboy Bebop, and Scott Rosenberg, who wrote the 2018 Venom, among other projects. The project is said to be nearing a deal, though plot details have remained elusive. So elsewhere, if you're a Scooby-Doo fan, you can catch Velma Season 2 that has recently just dropped on HBO Max. And in our last bit of TV news, The Simpsons has killed off a character that debuted 35 years ago in the original episode. As reported by the independent Larry Derrimopol, a seldom heard from but ever-present character was killed in the Season 35, Episode 15, Cremains of the Day. Fans will recognize him as one of the regulars at Moe's Tavern, where he could almost always be seen drinking in the background with a very drunk look on his face. Larry was practically silent for the entire tenure of the Simpsons character, only having 2 short lines since his 1989 debut. And despite being the focal point of Cremains of the Day, he still went voiceless in the episode as he died off screen at the very beginning. When Moe's kicks all the patrons out of his bar, Larry remains in his seat and is soon found to be dead. The episode reveals he thought of Homer, Lenny, Carl, and Moe as his best friends despite having never spoken to them, and their tasked with spreading his ashes. Larry was voiced by Harry Shearer, who also plays Mr. Burns, Ned Flanders, Principal Skinner, Waylon Smithers, and many more. Now deep into his 35th season, The Simpsons is dipping more and more into the catalog of deep cuts. Another recent example comes from season 34's Pin Gale episode, where the infamous season 1 characters of Jacques made a return after more than 3 decades. The Simpsons definitely diving deep and killing off Larry. So rest in peace, Larry. Maybe in the afterlife, your eyes are wide open. Our last bit of nerd news comes to you with a sequel of sorts announcement. Aaron Sorkin is planning a social network follow-up called I Blame Facebook for January 6th. More than a decade after Aaron Sorkin put a spotlight on the founding of Facebook in David Fincher's The Social Network, the writer confirmed he's planning on a follow-up. Sorkin said as much during the appearance of The Town with Matthew Bologna podcast, quote, "Look, yeah, I'll be writing this about this." Sorkin said when he asked about social media has impacted democracy in recent years, quote, "I blame Facebook for January 6th. When asked why, he said, quote, "You're going to need to buy a movie ticket." So he's playing coy. He's writing a movie. And does that mean we'll see Eisenberg as Zuckerberg again? Maybe. I haven't seen him in much lately. But that's going to do it for us here on Nerd News for the week. Again, told you it was a light week. When we come back, I'll sit down with Mr. Frank Cline and talk about X-Men 97, episodes 1 through 7, where we think it's going, how it's stuck to the source material, and how deep cuts they ran with the X-Men comics. All that and more on Podern Nerd. Welcome back to Podern Nerd. I'm being joined by the one and only Frank Cline.
Hi.
And today we're going to be talking about X-Men 97. And
I have X-Men pajamas on. You probably can't.
Oh, you can.
I didn't see them.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I only have the shirt, and the shirt is entirely too big. That's why I'm also wearing a jacket on a 95-degree day.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about X-Men 97 and where it is so far. And with Podern Nerd, as you know, as we progress, Frank will be back to talk about the final 3 episodes, which is a 3-parter. So first impressions on X-Men 97, it's a kind of a continuation of the story that happened in the 90s. That's why it's called 97. What were your initial thoughts, Mr. Frank Cline?
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. I will fight people that have any complaints about it because I love it that much. It's not for anybody that isn't like 30 plus years old. It's for us.
Yeah,
I want something else.
It's completely fair.
But I think a lot of people love it though. I don't really see too many complaints about it.
Everything I keep seeing on the internet is that it's the best thing Marvel's done in years.
Yeah, everything's positive about it.
Yeah. It's ranked 9 out of 10 on IMDb, 98% Rotten Tomatoes. Not something I usually hold a candle to when it comes to like what I'm going to watch.
Good for like kind of like a base.
Yeah, you kind of know, and like especially they don't seem to give a fair shake to comic stuff lately, especially lately. So the first couple episodes are in the books, 7 to be exact. Picks up right where graduation day left off back in 96 or whenever the hell the show ended. Charles is gone. Magneto's taking over. How did you feel about that dynamic with Magneto being the leader of the X-Men?
Didn't you feel like they kind of just like accepted it a little bit too fast though? They're just like, all right, this is Xavier's will.
The one who shocked me that accepted it the quickest was Wolverine.
Yeah, like I kind of feel like Wolverine should have not been okay with that. Or Scott. Like Cyclops kind of should have.
He probably had the most resistance to it of the group.
But he has probably so much respect for Xavier that he's like, if this is what Daddy wants.
It's exactly how it went down. Because Wolverine doesn't trust people he's been teammates with for a fucking decade. And yet he has not been very vocal at all. Actually, does kind of like harp on Wolverine a bit. Do you feel like he's taking a back seat this time around?
I think so, because like he's always so much at the forefront of everything X-Men that maybe they just wanted to be like, this is everybody's story, not just Wolverine's story, which I'm okay with, you know.
Especially since like he's been oversaturated. I mean, he's
I'm
the
sure
only individual.
His moment.
Yeah, and when it comes to the cinema, like he is the only guy who's made the transition aside from Deadpool to like his own movie and his own franchise type thing.
Right. He's been the one consistent, you know.
So Magneto's taken over the X-Men. He kind of has a vision of like where he wants to continue Charles' idea a bit. He's a little. How did you feel about Magneto's motivation in these first couple episodes.
No, I've been rewatching the series, so I kind of wanted to see like where we left off with Magneto, and then I just
Hmm.
didn't get to those episodes. So I do want to rewatch that and be like, exactly where was his mindset when it ended? But I guess so much went through the timeline that he's just like, this is what it is now. I can't keep
Hmm.
fighting this war. Let's try it this way. Or maybe that's just what he wants us to think. Hmm. Hmm.
It could be that because we're talking about the not too much resistance of him just taking over. It just felt like, okay, let's rush him in. He's the new leader, which
Yeah.
ultimately will hit a spot where he's not the new leader anymore. Um, but the sentiment from the American people or the world in general still see him as a terrorist. Like that didn't fucking change.
Right. Like I kind of agree with that. Like shit, doesn't this guy kill a crap toad of people? Like,
Hmm.
and then with the UN, he just raises them up in the sky and he's like, "Look, I'm still evil as shit, but
Like
I'm
on a drop
nice."
of every fear you have about us mutants, I am showing you I have the capability to do in this very moment.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna because I've changed.
In that UN scene too, kind of sets off like a side story that'll happen through these next couple episodes,
Mhm.
with Storm losing her powers.
Right.
How did you feel about Storm kind of taking that transition, and the fact that she like Forge wasn't a thing?
Yeah.
Like I didn't realize she didn't know Forge.
Yeah, that was kind of weird too that she didn't know Forge because I thought at this point they would have met. They
Hmm.
also, speaking of like that kind of vein, they seem a little confused about Sinister. Like
Yeah.
Beast was talking about Sinister. I was like, you all know who the hell Sinister is. He was all of season two.
Hmm.
But I guess you have to kind of say that as a director type thing to be like, for people who didn't watch to get caught up on who Sinister was, I suppose. But still, if this is a continuation, you all know who the hell Sinister is.
Uh,
So
Especially Morph. Like you think Morph would be very vocal about this whole Sinister
right,
thing.
Morph should be like, screw that guy. You guys remember when I was dead for a whole season?
Yeah. I was his guinea pig for like the entire run of
Yeah.
the show, but I'm just gonna be a weird looking mannequin thing in the background now. But Storm actually loses her powers. We're gonna stick
Right.
on her for a bit. She goes out to the desert, meets Forge for the first time, and then in like doing some research, I just realized that Forge really only appeared in the show when it came to like the future stuff.
Yeah, I guess
Uh,
so.
which is again still weird that like Forge is a new entity that they didn't know about. And then she quickly jumps like in bed with him. Like she gets very close to him very quick, even though he reveals that like he's the dickhead that helped build that
Yeah,
shit that took
right.
away her
With the
powers.
gun, yeah.
How did you feel about the Storm storyline and her side arc? Because she's eventually coming back. She'll probably be back in the fold for episode 8.
Well, I love her introduction when you just hear the Sentinel say
Mm-hmm.
like Omega level threat detected, and you just see Storm be a badass. Storm has always been one of my favorite X-Men. Um, and then when she does, spoiler, but I guess anybody watching this would already know, when she
Mm-hmm.
does get her powers back, like how badass was that scene of her going through? We see the black suit finally, her wearing, even though I like the white one better.
Mm-hmm.
But I got off topic. I'm like Joe Biden. What the hell was your question? How do I
Well,
just
no, it's
feel about her?
her story arc, which I mean, you're speaking
Yeah,
to it.
right. It's interesting. I want to see her and Forge. I want to see where that leads to. Like, I think they had a kid in the comics, didn't they?
I know the only love interest I remember her having was T'Challa,
Yeah, and yeah,
which I don't think they're going to do for obvious reasons, and if this is going to eventually merge into the cinematic universe or whatever.
yeah. So maybe, but
Uh, I think she did. She has a couple love interests in the comics too, because isn't
yeah,
like one of the alternate reality she's with Wolverine.
yeah. There's so many alternate
Hmm.
realities. I think she was even interested in Remy at one point.
Yeah, which we'll talk
Yeah.
about his arc in a few.
Mhm.
The other arc that's pretty interesting here is we talked a little bit about Sinister, but Scott and Jean, they
Right,
introduce Madeline Pryor
right.
and kind of start going into like, oh, this is the birth of Cable. This is what happened to Cable. This is how Cable go to the future. All that jazz. How did you feel about that kind of being dropped on you within like the first couple episodes?
I mean, way to like grow up, this series of like, here's some really heavy shit. Like, how would you feel knowing that you you fathered a child, this woman who was a clone, and like what was real, what thoughts were real, they're all mixed up. Though, okay, so Jean gets pissed off at Scott, right, for
Yes.
having that little, what do you want to call it, affair in psychic land. Sure.
Yeah.
But Jean, and he's just confused, basically. But Jean knows damn well who Wolverine is and is like, let me go ahead and kiss you. Excuse me, what exactly is your argument anymore?
Yeah, those two are not the same. At least Scott's cheating on you with you. Like, it's still you in a way.
Very different.
You're hooking up with a 100-year-old who had the wherewithal to be like, no, this is wrong. Wolverine's saying it's wrong.
Wolverine's the voice of reasoning in all of this. Someone's going fishy. But yeah, whatever.
So the other story arc that's kind of happening in the background, probably not prominent, is the Jubilee story arc with the Sunspot, and kind of bringing him into the fold. I thought he was really random at the beginning, of like, oh, okay.
It's kind of a weird choice for Sunspot of all people, but it's not bad.
Isn't he gay in the comics? Or am I thinking of somebody else? I could have sworn he was one of the gay characters that got married in one of them, unless I'm thinking of someone else.
That might have happened recently. I don't know.
So I thought it was when he appeared. I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird that he's like Jubilee's interest.
Yeah.
And then the whole arc is he's scared about coming out about being a mutant, which is like, isn't he the gay one? So like he's gonna have like double coming out issues.
Maybe that's supposed to be like the parallel, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know.
So
if he was the gay character.
How do you feel about that story arc? Because they actually get their own episode of, half episode of Motenda, which brings back Mojo.
Yeah, that was Mojo. Seeing him again, that was pretty cool. How he was like skinny and then gets all big when social media starts going nuts or whatever.
Yeah.
They haven't really done much though.
They're lingered in the background.
Yeah, they need to start having at least Sunspot do more, because we've barely seen him turn into Sunspot, right?
Yeah, I think the last episode 7 is the first time he actually said something to his parents, and the parents were like, "Oh yeah, we knew you burned our house down 3 times."
Yeah, we don't care. Burnt down the house. There's mutants everywhere. We figured it out.
Yeah. So that's kind of a minor arc that's happening in the background, and then the major arc, which I think has dominated the back half of these 7 episodes, is Rogue. Rogue and Gambit, and all of a sudden the Magneto trios. Did you see that coming out of anywhere?
I mean, I know that happened in like a Savage Land world where she was with him in a comic. I just didn't think they were going to do it. I hate it. I hate when like the older mentor, like when Batman was with Barbara Gordon. Like I just it gives me the ick, as the young hip people say.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that I'm not a big fan of the Magneto design in this run. He looks like that character that's always with Darkseid in DC, Mom, and he's got the PM on the chest. And it's like, come on,
like Granny Goodness to you.
Yeah, Granny Goodness. Yeah, that's the character I was thinking of. And his voice just kind of fits it a little bit. Like if you made that voice a bit feminine, it would be Granny Goodness.
He's a little bit too sexy. I don't like sexy Magneto. I don't. Stupid sexy Magneto.
I want Gandalf back, okay? Like give me a little bit of Gandalf with a helmet.
Right. He needs to be pissed off more. He's a little bit too but yeah, her kissing him. Do you think she did that just for more information, or?
I don't know. I think it's probably a mix of the mere fact of somebody she can kiss that's not Deadpool.
Yeah. Fair.
But that whole, I have no interest in that love triangle for whatever reason. And every time they play it, to your point with the ick, I zone out and don't really care.
Also, like Gambit not really being pissed off at Magneto. If it's a love triangle, I want to see Gambit fight Magneto. We haven't seen that yet.
Yeah.
We see Wolverine, the guy who has a metal skeleton, fight Magneto. See the guy who can blow stuff up by touching him. But
Yeah, you would think he would have
no,
gotten a
I'm
little
pretty
bit.
sure Magneto would wipe the floor with Gambit, but still, be interesting.
Oh, well, so let's talk a bit about Gambit too, because that whole genocide on Genosha that happens in that episode. That's a pretty powerful move he did at the end to take
Yeah,
out that master mold or whatever the hell it is,
totally.
the hybrid. Um, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect him to be the one that like saved the day. I did
Yeah.
expect him to get fucked up, but I didn't expect him to be like
Well, he has been
savior.
considered Omega in
Mhm.
comics. We just haven't seen him be Omega at all yet.
Yeah, most of the show he's in the background just cracking one-liners or something.
Yeah, just throwing his little cards. But
Euphemism for dick.
lest we forget that everything he touches gets supercharged, so it
Mhm.
makes sense. And it's like sticking in him, and he just blows it up and says that badass line, name's Gambit, remember it, which is going to be everywhere on every kind of merchandise.
Oh, I bought a T-shirt already that has it.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
It just didn't get here in time. Maybe it'll show up one day down in our episodes. But
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of a cool death. It was the first time I think a cartoon in a while has had me like,
Yeah, I
oh
was
shit.
sitting there just like, and then the music was all sad after it. It was
Yeah,
like, oh,
apparently when the Undertaker retired WWE, they're doing the slow piano version of it. It's like he's not
Yeah.
dead.
Damn it. But I mean, there is time travel. We saw Cable the same episode, and also, Gambit does become one of the Four Horsemen, so that could be. I'm pretty sure we're going to see Gambit again in some capacity. If they keep
It'd be
him
pretty
dead,
shitty to kill him off.
yeah. But hey, they might just keep him dead.
They kill him off, and then they brought back everybody. Like I don't know if you watch Invincible, but they did the same thing there for most of that season, where they killed off like half the Guardians and didn't bring back the one until like the very end. It's like, wow, why did you hate this one so much?
Yeah.
I thought that's probably the best episode in my opinion thus far.
Yeah.
And the moment I saw the title of the next episode, which is episode 6, which is Life Death Part 2, it's like, oh, so they're gonna do that dickhead thing where they don't talk about what just happened for a while.
Yeah.
And it goes to show Charles with the Shi'ar Empire becoming the Emperor.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about that?
She's the worst person. She's terrible. She's like, listen, you're not going to go see your children, which I know all about because I've been in episodes and I've seen them and I've talked to them and I get your love for them. You're not going to see them. And the only way you're going to prove your love for me is like my sister, who you just met, who doesn't like you, gives you a lobotomy. You cool with this? And to her shock, he went, no.
You wouldn't do that for me? Forget your entire fucking life? What the fuck is this? Expectations set by women. God damn it.
Even space women. You can't escape it.
But we get it's basically that episode covers what he's been up to, Storm's path to redemption of getting her powers back. So basically that episode's running concurrent with episode 5, because that episode ends with them seeing the events and Charles reacting to the events.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Charles walking? Is he going to come back? Like, his iconic thing is he's in a wheelchair.
Yeah, I don't know why they decided to do that, right? Like, why wouldn't you just keep him in his, like, little hover chair?
Because and really, no explanation of how he got healthy.
Yeah, well, I'm guessing it's their technology. But like, what, he's not going to bring it with him, and what, she never brought it. And also, there's so many holes with that because now Forge could just make you anything, literally anything. He's a tricky character to put in there. Not to bring him up again, but like, he's very OP. He can do literally anything he imagines.
He's definitely a plot device that if like, oh, I don't know how to get out of this situation. Well, Forge can build something.
Yeah.
So it just seemed weird that like they're rushing. It feels like they're rushing Xavier back in.
Right.
Because I mean the the thing they've been doing too, which I think is neat, and we'll talk about before we get to the episode 7, is each intro has been unique to the events that are happening in the show. So the first season or the first episode, the intro mirrors what the end of the last X-Men show was.
Mhm.
Then Charles is removed in favor of Magneto since he's running it. And then, the tragedy with Gambit. Nightcrawler was also introduced in that episode, so now he's in it as that position instead of Gambit. And I think it's unique how they're doing these like little Easter eggs here and there. How have you felt about the, I guess, embracing of we're owned by Marvel now?
I mean, so far so good, really. They do love their little Easter eggs and their little hints. I mean, they have one of the perfect things to use, which is morph, because it's, hey, do you want to see, Quicksilver? You want to see whoever? You want to see Lady Deathstrike? And you just throw them in there. The Quicksilver thing doesn't make sense, and it pissed me off.
I didn't think he got their powers. I thought he just looked like them.
Well, here's the thing. He gets their physical attributes. So if they're super strong, he'll be super strong.
Yeah.
But is super speed a physical attribute? It's not like Quicksilver's super fast because of his body type. That's just his power. He's just super fast.
Yeah.
I guess it's an argument that could be made, but
it still seemed weird that like that's his go-to of like I figured he'd be like the mystique of the episode of like, hey, we need to get like information for something, send Morphin looking like the person, not him actively using other people's powers to
fill in roles and I mean, he was able to like grab everybody when the jet he's been used pretty cool, but his
especially since they're not giving him any lines.
And like, I want to know more about him because what the hell happened, dude? Like, you were out for seasons. You were mind controlled. People say he has PTSD. At one point, he just pretended to be Xavier, who everybody thought was dead, and that's really up. He's just walking around like, yeah. Wouldn't this be weird if I was just Xavier? Waka waka.
And honestly, having Sinister as the underlining villain for like the first 7 episodes, why wouldn't you go, hey, Morph, what do you know about this guy that you fucking spent 8 years with? No, they just choose to like, oh, he's gonna crack a joke back there because he wants to be some other character that we want to shoehorn in. But they do make MCU or at least greater Marvel references. The Daily Bugle has appeared. Captain America appeared. Yep. They also brought in Ronan and the Kree.
Yep.
So how do you feel about like those little integrations? Cap being like the biggest, actually having dialogue and interaction with Rogue.
I mean, hell, if you own it, put it in, make it a more richer universe. I think they should keep away from MCU events, though. Don't you? They should just use the characters to their own universe.
Yeah, they got a timeline discrepancy like crazy, considering it's 97 and Cap is walking around. Cap's not walking around till 2012 in the MCU.
I actually didn't think about that. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a cameo too by the Watcher who watched the events of Genosha. So even though they're kind of lagging in the time scale because they're 30 years behind or 20 years behind the MCU. Well, actually 30 because they have the five-year jump start in Endgame. They're 30 years behind. It just feels like they can do whatever they want. And then if they have this incursions they keep talking about in Doctor Strange and stuff, just like, oh, well, that universe is gone now. We don't care. Like
that. Yeah, they might do that too. Or they might just tie in all the animated shows that they had. They could put in, Spider-Man and all that.
They've got that Spider-Man freshman year or whatever they announced that they were supposed to do. They have all the what ifs, obviously, is exploring the fact that they can do multiverse stuff.
Yeah.
So far, I mean, as we wind down our segment on the first 7, they're heading into a big confrontation. Rogue is hell-bent on avenging Gambit, and we get the big reveal that Bastion has been behind Sinister, who was behind Trask. In this whole arc that's been happening. How do you think the final 3 episodes are going to go down?
I think we're going to see some more deaths, and then I'm hoping Cable fixes it. But I mean, we have a hell of a villain. That is one of the worst X-Men villains. He might be worse than Apocalypse, honestly, because he has no. Well, okay, Apocalypse doesn't really have a moral compass, but this is a machine made into flesh, basically, that only knows mutants are evil. That's its whole purpose.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's not going to be good for them. I think it's just going to everything kind of gets killed, and maybe then Wolverine has his moment to shine in a Days of Future Past type scenario. Even though we've already seen it, but we can
Do
go back
you
to it.
think they take a big swing, and then to piggyback on your thought that everybody dies or a lot of people are going to die, the Wolverine we'll see in July in Deadpool 3 is from this universe?
Oh, I don't
Because
want
there's a
that.
line in the trailer where Paradox goes, "This Wolverine failed
Yeah,
his world."
yeah, I don't want that though.
Neither do I.
Yeah,
I want this to exist on its own entity.
yeah, we don't. Yeah, not everything needs to be connected.
Mhm.
I'm kind of getting tired of everything being connected in the MCU. I, you know how many shows I haven't watched that I need to watch now before?
I think
Like,
that I'm getting tired of the fact where like you expect it to be connected and then they don't. Like most
yeah,
of phase 4 and 5 has been, oh, we just came off Endgame where everything tied up.
hmm
All right, we got to start building that foundation again, and they're not playing with it as much as you thought they would have.
I also think X-Men works better when you don't have a lot of heroes, because the more heroes you put in, the more it doesn't make sense. Like, why are people okay with Spider-Man having powers and doing incredible things, but this guy who could shoot lasers is like, oh, that's a mutant. I hate this guy. Oh, is that Spider-Man? Cool. Hey, he's a
Mhm.
spider person. That's awesome. But they just know he's not a mutant. Like, no, they don't. So it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, especially since they even introduced into the Ms. Marvel, she is a
Mhm.
mutant. So
Yeah.
instead of her being an inhuman,
hmm
there are mutants in the MCU at this point.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I do think it's a 3-part finale in a way. I do think it's going to have big implications. They did renew it for a season 2.
Yeah.
Uh, it's getting all kinds of rave reviews, so I think this is going to just kind of be the pivot point for Marvel animation going forward.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to talking with you next week on what happens in part 1 of
Yeah.
the 3-part finale and see what we got right, what we got wrong, and hopefully we still love it.
I mean, my heart's already been broken with Gambit. It can only
Ah,
go up now, right?
until they killed Nightcrawler and
Yeah. And
zapped the powers away of everybody else.
they showed one of my favorite B-listers, Strong Guy, so they'll probably bring him in just to kill him.
Yeah, they really went into the well for some of the mutants they
Yeah.
showed and let live.
Yeah.
Whereas like, oh, we're gonna kill Leech, who's a kid. Fuck it.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you
Uh,
gonna do?
so I'm excited for it. Thank you for taking this time. Anything you want to plug before we cut off to the next segment?
No, just keep watching our BPP stuff and all that. We'll have
Sweet.
more stuff.
Awesome. We'll be back after these commercial breaks with Mr. Brian Gibson to talk Bad Batch and their penultimate episode before their finale. So stick around.
I don't know what I'm doing. Bye.
Welcome back to Podern Nerd. Joining me again this week to talk Bad Batch and the penultimate episode, Flash Strike, Gibby.
Whoop whoop, Bad Batch, baby!
So we got 2 episodes left. This is one of them. As a standalone, I thought it was kind of slow. What were your thoughts on the Flash Strike episode?
I thought it was pretty slow too. I mean, I feel like they're going back to that whole great episode, boring episode, or like a filler episode, a good episode, filler episode. Seems to be a pretty common, because like even the Mandalorian did that for a long ass time. Freaking Book of Boba seemed to do that for a long ass time. There's only 7 of those, and it's like, how can you have a freaking filler episode? But yeah, it's very. I mean, it's definitely on tune on how they handle their narratives lately. I don't really particularly like it. I kind of wish they would drop 2 episodes and just have one filler and one that actually means something. Like if that's how you want to do it.
Yeah,
but like it's
especially with
more like
this
a
one.
tease. So I guess is the problem.
Especially with this one, because I understand what they were doing. They're teeing up the finale. Like everything they did in this episode was piggybacking off of the week before of getting behind enemy lines. Now we're seeing like, all right, they're converging. They made it through. Omega goes and finds the fucking space whale.
They didn't really even make it through. I mean, they made it, but they're being hunted. Like they're found or exposed, so their secrecy just went right out the fucking window.
Well, Hunter, Wrecker, and Crosshair are running through the woods.
Yep.
Echo made it into the planet.
Echo is the only one doing his job correctly.
I don't have an answer for that.
Stupid device from Amazon. So we won't be talking about that character anymore because that's going to trigger that thing.
Yeah.
But Omega, she's still in like the holding cell with the other what would be younglings. Had the
she got out and then did some kind of recon and then came back and said, "I found out some stuff." And it's, how the fuck do you end an episode like that?
Yeah, it was a blink and you miss it reveal of what she discovered, because she crawled through the vents and then found the I don't know what they're called, but there's the space whales. They have one contained there and constantly blasting it with a laser, so I guess it can't escape or whatever. They're disrupting, I guess, its form of transportation so it doesn't hyperspeed.
Yeah, I thought that was what was powering the planet or something. Like it was siphoning the energy out of it. I mean, who the fuck knows? And that could technically make it so it can't, because obviously we know from Rebels as well. Well, primarily probably.
It started in Rebels with Ezra,
but you kind of really got the whole energy aspect from Ahsoka, and like how their tails light up, and then how they generate the warp speed or light speed, or I don't even know what the hell they call it in this, but go into hyperspace. Like that was kind of shown there, and then here I thought they were tapping into it for energy for some reason. It might be for the clone, or the cloning process might take a lot of energy. I got no idea, because typically anything that requires a ton of energy for some reason, at least in work or Star Wars lore, always on a freaking molten planet. If you ever know, like anything that requires a ton of energy needs to be on basic like Venus. It needs to be on fire the entire time.
Well, that is probably, like you said, it's tied into Project Necromancer, because like this entire season is just Palpatine's obsession with cloning himself so he can continuously survive and give justification to Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. But to your point, and to what we kind of said, this was the filler episode of, all right, Omega found that out. Echo's making his way towards Omega. And then the other three jackasses, we would assume, will eventually make it in, but they're on the run.
Who knows at this point? I mean, they might just become a distraction that allows... who the fuck knows? I really don't know, because they're on the outside. There's beasts on the outside. We haven't seen the dog things yet. You know that they have them there. So they haven't actually released those yet. They obviously found one of the beasts or whatever the hell it is that protects it. There might be more. Who knows? I think it's going to be a gargantuan task to get them inside the base, because I don't know how in the world they would even do it now that they know that they're there. Like, you're trying to break into a fortress when they know you're coming. It's like, yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, they captured the Imperial prisoner. What the hell was his name?
I can't remember.
The former officer of the Empire. They captured him because he ran like a bitch and ran right into the troopers that were out there.
Yeah. Which I don't know if that's going to matter at all, because it's not like he had any fucking clue what was going on anyway.
He didn't know where it was at. He didn't really provide much. I think he gave him like one little lead that allowed them to
he just said that from this planet they get the hyperspace coordinates, but somebody physically goes on the ship or whatever and gives it to him. But yeah, that's kind of weird. I don't exactly understand that, because you would think, in theory, at least in lore, you can always have a robot tap into a spaceship and figure out where they've jumped to.
Yeah, like the manifest or whatever.
Yeah,
But
so I don't know exactly how you erase that or whatever, but I mean, if you could, smugglers would be quite interested in that information.
yeah, you're not wrong there.
So they didn't really. I don't know if it's a plot issue or whatever, but whatever. I get what they're trying to say, trying to do. They're trying to say it's secretive, but it's very strange in how they do it.
So I
But
guess this all begs the question: the hell is going to happen in the finale? You have one episode left to wrap up not just the season, the entire series.
I'm curious how long it's going to be. Like, I can't see it being like a 20, 30-minute episode. Like,
That'll suck if it is, because I mean
like
they've been
it has
averaging
to, like
between
in my
20
mind,
to
it
30.
has to be at least like 45 minutes to an hour. Like, I just don't know how you wrap up. Like, the only way it makes sense is if like in the first 5 minutes, fucking people are dying. Like, I don't know how else you wrap it up.
So, according to the development, according to Omega's voice actress Michelle Ang, Omega originally had a very different ending that would have seen her character set on a path that could have had her play a major role in Star Wars canon. But instead, the writers changed her ending to one she described as bittersweet. That to me sounds like Omega's going to bite the fucking dust.
I mean, that's what I assumed, and I assume she's doing it. She's going to sacrifice herself for the kids, and the kids are getting out.
Mhm.
And the question is who else gets out? Who else dies? I don't know. It's going to be a fucking shit show.
An interesting note in the development too is that the entirety of the season was recorded remotely, except for the finale. The finale they were required to go in person to Los Angeles to record.
Hmm.
I don't know if that really has a difference because it's animation.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they probably had them do multiple takes or whatever, or multiple
Endings.
endings, etc. Yeah. So she might be wrong. Who knows?
True.
Yeah. Did
At
they
least
do
at this
that with the
point.
guy that played Spider-Man?
Oh yeah, they constantly gave Tom Holland wrong scripts. Him, Mark Ruffalo, never got the full story to anything because they kept fucking spoiling it.
Yeah. So you never know. Maybe they felt like she'd spoil it.
That could be a good chance because who listens to the voice actors? Like you can't. It's very hard to name voice actors unless they're already established actors for the most part. So they could be casually just doing an interview and be like, "Oh yeah, well Omega's gonna escape and she'll be in the Ahsoka season 2."
Yeah.
What? Like okay, that's huge because Ahsoka's 20 years, 30 years after.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So who do you think survives? Because right now none of them are on. We're in Rebels, correct? At least the ones that we have left.
I think the only one that isn't the only one the tracker guy. Isn't he the only one that survives? That we or I think it's him and
It's Wolf, Rex, and a third one I never remember that they find on that fucking walker.
So I assume the rest have just got to die. Like I'd be shocked if they, because otherwise I don't see why they wouldn't be on the walker. I guess is my issue.
Mm-hmm. So in the Lost Commanders episode, that's the one where Ezra and the crew find the walker and they're hunting the snake. It might be Wrecker.
I thought Wrecker was, but Dad kept telling me I was wrong, so I didn't want to say it.
Well, I remember
having,
the character being as crazy as Wrecker.
Well, I thought he had like super migraine issues, which you're kind of seeing in Wrecker currently, just not as
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I could be completely wrong, but it's been a hot minute since I've seen it.
Yeah, I haven't watched Rebels in fucking forever. To the point where like I constantly forget who it's there. So okay, as we're confused about Kanan's Kanan's disdain towards clones, it's you know why I keep thinking it's Wrecker?
What?
The character's name is Gregor.
Gregor.
Yeah. So it's Wolf, Rex, and Gregor that are on the walker. So Crosshair. One who will not be named because it triggers Amazon devices. What was it? Crosshair, Hunter, Wrecker, all four of them, I don't think have made an appearance post Bad Batch.
Yeah. So I mean, I would assume they wouldn't split up as a team, so they're all dead. Well, it's either that or they have to die in between somehow. Like I don't think there's any way around that.
I think definitively, if we're going to sit here and take bets on a character to die, Crosshair is going to die.
Yes.
Just because he kind of had a redemption arc in this season, and his death would be more tragic because you want him to pull through, and it would only be apropos for him to die.
Yep.
I can see Hunter, Wrecker, and the one who shall not be named that triggers Amazon devices escaping, but laying low.
See, my only thing is I don't see them escaping without her.
Mm-hmm. Then would that mean she would survive as well, huh?
Yeah.
And on top of that, you have the other female clone.
I would even say, like, if they try and save her and they like kill her or whatever, I feel like they would just go fucking bananas and just go on a mass killing spree. Like
that too.
Like I just so it's like I feel like they're doomed if they don't get her.
It could go full sideways, and they grab the space whale and they jump to wherever the fuck Ezra jumps to, and then they appear in Ahsoka season 2.
I mean, yeah.
They could be on that planet already exploring stuff, or just be somewhere else.
Yeah, they snuck onto Thrall's ship or whatever in the fake armor.
Yeah, just full fucking send. Right? Are you excited for the finale?
Kind of upset that it's ending like this. Like I said, it kind of feels like they're just kind of wrapping it up because it almost feels like Disney just doesn't want to deal with it anymore, which I don't understand.
I think it's a mix of that and Filoni's now doing the live action shit.
Yeah, but it just seems kind of, I don't know, like it just seems really rushed. Sort of like how was it season 7 of the Clone Wars seemed really rushed. Like, oh shit, we just got to throw all this in here to clap loose ends and then call it a day.
Yeah, we were sold. Wrap it up.
Yeah, so it's one of those like,
got to get off Cartoon Network. We're not allowed to be here anymore.
Yeah, because it felt like there's still a lot more to be said and told, and like you can definitely go more into this whole program, etc. And there's so much more to explore in this time frame that they just like you can even bring you bring in more people in like a Sash Venture. You could bring in other people that we know exist out there, but they just it just seems really, really, really rushed.
I think the weird thing is usually when you watch a Star Wars project, you know the future of a character for the most part, or like you know their outcome. There are so many question marks about these 4, and the only outcome we know is that the Project Necromancer is the reason Rise of Skywalker will make any sense, and that's really the only definitive answer we know about the outcome of this.
And you know that they had to get enough of Omega in order to complete that task, basically. Yeah,
kind of like watching you see Anakin in episode 1. You know his fate. You know the carnage he's going to unleash at some point. So you're looking at Omega, and when you finally put 2 and 2 together, that she's kind of like the solution to the Project Necromancer. You just assume she's got a doomed fate, unless what we saw of Palpatine is because Omega escaped. So maybe if Omega was kept, Palpatine would have been in episode 7 rather than episode 9.
Like I just feel like there could have been so much more they could have done with this. Like I mean, we saw Palpatine in it. Like we didn't see Vader at all.
Yeah,
and you would think for a project this big, Vader would be somewhat involved.
Or was even Tarkin in this season at all? Or Thrawn? Well, no, Thrawn could have been.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, there's so many like cross plays that they could have done, and like weird tie-ins. Like, you could have had a weird tie-in with fucking Rebels, for crying out loud, if you really wanted to, because it's all roughly around the same period.
Yeah, I think Rebels might have been 5 years after this, but like you said, relatively close. You could have taken Bad Batch up to the Rebels beginning.
Yeah, I mean, that's more what I thought was going to happen, but that clearly didn't happen. like Ahsoka's still out there. You could have had a tie-in with her.
Hmm.
Because she knows the clones, she knows Rex, etc. They escaped together, so you could have put some more filler between,
What
the
the hell
Clone
they've been up to?
Wars and Rebel. Like, I mean, you could just, fill in some. Like, they just, again, I feel like it's just rushed. I feel like they probably would have done it, except for it, like, oh, this is your last season. Wrap it up, guys.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that Tales of the Empire isn't the like, well, this will help tie up some of the loose ends, because at least it's following the Dathomir witch that was in Ahsoka, and it's following
Well, I think that's just because
the
of
one
the
Inquisitor.
Ahsoka thing, and I mean, that tied in with Clone Wars too, I believe.
Hmm.
That whole religion. I think it's a religion. I don't even know exactly what that is, to be
Well,
honest.
at some point they got to get massacred, because that's what happened to them. Like if you play I know you don't play the games, but if you play Jedi Fallen Order,
Mhm.
you
Well, no,
team
you
up
find
with
that out in Rebels that they get. Or wait a minute, I
no,
thought Rebels they did.
they allude to it because they do go
Oh.
back to they meet the spirits of the witches.
Yeah.
But you actually work with one of the witches that escaped in the video games, Survivor and
Because
Fallen
that's also
Jedi.
where Maul came from. Darth Maul.
Mhm. And Savage Press.
Yeah.
And technically, Asajj Ventress is a sister.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of
yeah.
there's a lot around that, and Ahsoka ended with that being like the focal point of we're going back to Dathomir.
Yeah, and then you could have, like I said, there's a lot that I feel like they left on the table there, and they just didn't want to. Because I think I'm trying to remember. I think probably around this time, maybe if not a little bit earlier, is when they bombed the shit out of Mandalore, isn't it?
Yeah, it's around there's still battle droids and shit in it when they do
Yeah.
that whole thing.
So like you could even tie this back into Mandalorian to a certain like like this is a decent time frame to where you can do a lot of backfilling type of shenanigans here. Like they go to fucking Mandalore for some fucking quest or bounty or something for some stupid reason because it links to the Necromancer project, or like, I mean, they could have done so much more, and they just, like I said,
Had a younger Boba. There's a younger Boba getting started into bounty hunting at that
there
time.
you go, younger Boba. But now they're working like the dark side, because not the dark side, but the underworld. You could have brought fucking Darth Maul into it.
Crimson Dawn, all that stuff.
Yeah, and like you could have really went down the syndicate path, because that's how they were making their money, etc., and actually went into more of what I thought the Book of Boba would have went, but it didn't.
Yeah.
Which is more of the underworld.
Yeah, I mean, Cad Bane picked up kidnapping kids like he was in the Clone Wars cartoon.
Yeah.
He didn't stop. Like, there's a lot that they could have explored, and maybe there is. Maybe there'll be an announcement. I mean, May 4th is this weekend, and usually for Star Wars Celebration, they'll announce all their projects and stuff like that. So maybe there is another cartoon, and
I'm
they
hoping
just
they
felt
put together like a timeline like they did for the Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
What they did, was it Phase 5 and 6? Was it?
Yeah. I mean, you've got shows out there lingering. Ahsoka season 2, The Skeleton Crew. We have the Acolyte, which is not really in this time frame because it's 100 years or so before Phantom Menace. But you got, technically, there's like a Lando project out there they were talking about. Andor season 2.
Yeah, isn't there supposed to be another trilogy with Rey?
There's at least one movie with her in production right now. I don't know if it's going to go further.
Like, I guess the next question, realistically, is what's the next trilogy that they're going to do? Or are they going to move away from trilogies?
It sounds like they really want to get into the High Republic stuff. Like all the books pivoted to that. I subscribe to the comics. A lot of the comics pivoted to the High Republic era of like when the Sith started to reemerge again ish. Because I honestly, I'd like to see a story on Plagueis and Sidious coming up.
Yeah, I mean, you can do a lot. It's just, I don't know. I just feel like there's definitely a lot that they could have done with this series that they just kind of, like, again, really just feels like they're rushing the end. It literally feels like season 7 of Clone Wars, where they're like, oh, fuck. We're just told we're being axed. Quick, wrap it up.
I'm hoping it's partially that, only for the fact that maybe they realized they've run the course of the Bad Batch themselves, and now it's a larger project, and they're just going to come back as a different cartoon name, like just something. Like,
that's what I was hoping. That's what I was thinking at first, but just the way that they're running this just feels like it's a rush job.
Mm-hmm. They're putting their bow tie on this Project Necromancer, and like that's the takeaway of what this 3 seasons was Project Necromancer. Well, that's going to do it for us here on this episode, Final Strike or Final Flash or Flash Strike, whatever the fuck it's called. I've been watching a lot of DBZ. I'm sorry. We'll be back next week to talk the finale and talk a little bit, maybe Tales of the Empire if he and I get through it. We're very busy people.
Mm-hmm.
But anything you want to plug?
No.
Okay, that's fair. We'll be back to wrap up the show after this. Thank you, Gibby, for joining us. This has been Bad Batch. Back with more Pod Nerd after this. Well, that's going to do it for us this week on Podern Nerd. I've been your host, Chris the Dace Man Dace. I know it was a relatively short one compared to our initial, but we'll be back next week with a jam-packed episode reviewing the finale of Star Wars Bad Batch with myself and Gibby. Frank Cline will hopefully join us again for X-Men 97 and part 1 of the 3-part finale that they've got going on. Plus, we'll talk Tales of the Empire and give you our review on Knuckles. I know I might have said that we would have had Knuckles today, but it's a lot to pack in this much TV. So remember, Basement Dwellers, stick to the protocol. Mondays, you can catch a Dace-tacular Mind with yours truly. The finale is actually coming up this Monday. No, it's not. I've got 2 more episodes of Dace-tacular Mind. You can catch Jersey Fanatics every Friday. New episode dropping this Friday as we review the West Coast trip. And Podern Nerd every Wednesday. So keep your eyes peeled to Facebook.com/Basement Protocol Productions. And remember, Basement Dollars, stick to protocol. Nerd out with your. That's probably inappropriate. See you next Wednesday.